Welcome to Discussing Fitchburg Now. I'm your host, Sam Squailia. Our show here is on composting, all about composting. And for the first segment, we have Erica Wood from Growing Places and Adam Jankauskas from City Compost in Gardner.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk about all about composting, how to compost, what is compost, and the options that we have to compost, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, it should be a great conversation.
Yeah, okay, so compost. It starts with the food that you could throw away in the trash can, but instead we're diverting it from the landfill and sorting it a different way.
Yeah, you know, a lot of folks view food as waste. They'll throw it right in the trash, or even worse, down the garbage disposal. It's always brutal when people tell me about that. And it can actually be directed back into the soil and forms a great natural resource compost for growing more fresh food.
Yeah, and I bet you must do composting at Growing Places,
yeah,
right?
So we do compost, and there's actually, in addition to food waste, there's always garden waste. So there are all the weeds you throw away, or dead plants at the end of a season. So all of that can be composted as well. Yard waste. So we have some some traditional compost, just compost bins set up at our gardens, but we've also been talking with Adam as well to potentially work with City Compost and have our compost picked up.
Ah, yeah. That's so easy.
Yes, it is easy.
I've been composting for many years, forever. But really all I do is I fill a ceramic bin and I just take it over to the stone wall and I dump it over the stone wall. And then I walk away, and that's it.
Yeah, sometimes that's a little less composting and a little bit more feeding the animals in the backyard.
Yeah, well, I never put meat or dairy. It was just coffee filters, and whatever little scraps of food.
Yeah, a lot of people think that meat, dairy, bread, different grains can't compost. A lot of articles will mention don't compost these at home. It's actually because they tend to attract animals and have a higher risk of creating odor. But from a nutrient perspective, if it's handled right and balanced properly, then they can go into the compost pile.
Right, if you compost well.
Yes, that's very important.
Or if you have City Compost, just handle it for you.
Yeah, try to make it easy for folks. It's just a matter of dropping it into one container instead of another, and then folks are able to receive the compost back. So.
Yeah. Okay, so when we talk about City Compost, we're talking about a service that actually comes and picks up your compost like a trash service, right? So it's, or like recycling. So you have recycling pickup, you have trash pickup, and now you have the option for compost pickup, right?
Yes, so folks will get set up with a container such as this. I have a 5-gallon pail down here, and then one of these for the countertop. Just makes it easier for folks to have something they can move right from the cutting board to the countertop container, and then when these are full, emptied into the 5-gallon for service.
Yeah, so you can garden with Growing Places, eat your vegetables, keep your scraps, and have them picked up by Adam.
Yeah. The compost you get back is nice finished stuff, fully screened, ready for the garden. With this, with compost, you really don't need to add any other fertilizers to your soil. And then it also adds a lot of the organic matter that the different soil microbes love to have that enable it to symbiotically interact with the plant's root system and really get things growing. The community gardens that Growing Places have, a lot of plots, and then they're, the learning gardens in addition to the home gardens they build after people go through their program. The compost is perfect for.
Yeah, so we always promote compost instead of other traditional forms of fertilizing your garden, just because a lot of things like Miracle-Gro actually harm the beneficial bacteria that's in the soil that creates these really healthy, vibrant plants. So as Adam was saying, the compost helps to feed that healthy bacteria, but it also provides organic matter, or just it helps prevent the soil from compacting, and it allows for air and water to reach the roots of the plants better, which just leads to a healthier garden. Yeah.
So instead of adding Miracle-Gro fertilizers and buying the soil and buying the things that you need, you can make it yourself, or you can have your things made with City Compost.
Right.
So when you have it, when you have your compost picked up, City Compost, after 6 months, you get your compost back?
Yeah, so with City Compost, 100% of material is tracked in by weight, and then you're able to include everything, so you don't have to worry about separating out meat or dairy, because there's no risk of animals. And then after 6 months, which is an accelerated process versus the typical 1.5 to 2 years it usually takes while at home, because I'm processing in volume, able to have a much more accelerated process due to higher temperatures that are reached. And then the compost is screened, as mentioned and shown, which you can receive back based upon what you put in.
Yeah, so Growing Places has enabled me to purchase compost worms, which I started
Compost
taking care of a
worms?
few,
those the
several
red
months
worms?
ago. They're red wiggler worms.
Red wiggler
Yeah, so I have this little setup. It's really just 2, I think 10 or 20 gallon containers that I've rigged into this little red wiggler compost bin home, and it enables you to take your produce and compost it. But as Adam mentioned, it does sometimes cause odor or attract critters.
With meat and dairy?
Yeah, or even with your vegetables when you're doing it in a closed space like that. And
Sometimes the worms can get a little, like a lot of water can build up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really fun way to do it. It's fun to bring it to the farmer's market and let people,
Is this like a spin composter thing?
No, it's actually literally just a bucket, basically, and it has holes in the bottom of the inner bin that allows some air circulation. But you can just stick your hands in the bin, pull out some of the newspaper covering, and see the worms and what they're composting. So it's a really fun engagement tool. It's something to start conversation, and it does produce some compost, but it's a little messy. It is. There's a learning curve to it, and you have to really make sure you're balancing things right so you don't get that strong smell or attract critters on your porch or things like that.
So when we're talking about composting options, right? So we have the new service that we can have picked up.
Right.
But what other options? We have also the option of just dumping it over a stone wall.
I wouldn't quite call that composting.
Okay, maybe.
So there are home systems. A lot of home systems tend to be too small to really get things going. The truth of the matter is,
There's
if you
that
do
spinny plastic red black bin thing.
the tumblers, they're called. Yeah. So every system out there from a home perspective has different trade-offs associated with it. The tumblers tend to clump up and will go anaerobic, which is a condition that without oxygen. And so a different type of microbe will come in, and then that's where you get your odors from methane. And then so you want your pile to stay aerobic, which is kind of the idea behind the tumbler, but because of the balancing challenges and everything that comes from the kitchen being very green, and is required to be balanced off with a dry brown material. And that actually is this chart here, where you have your greens and your browns.
Oh, so
And
you want to balance your home compost.
Yeah, so the greens and the browns, is
you can put
kind
wood
of
in
your
there?
elementary school for your carbon and nitrogen ratio, which is kind of a deeper level way of looking at and analyzing a material.
So we can compost shrub trimmings, corn stalks, straw, leaves, cardboard.
Yeah, so any
Paper.
any material from plant or animal will actually be able to return to the soil. And it depends upon what the conditions that item was used in terms of a paper product.
What about
in terms of
greasy
the quality.
pizza boxes? Because we can't recycle them.
So in theory,
Compost
you
them?
would be able to compost that. It's not something that's taken in with City Compost service because paper cardboard that's used in food tends to have fungicides in it. And then you want those fungi in the soil to work with the plant system. And then any colored ink also has heavy metals in it, typically. And so with the goal for City's compost to be going towards food production, we want to minimize the amount of heavy metals as much as possible, the major one being lead, if you've done any gardening and whatnot. So.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be putting some of that stuff into your garden and then having it in your vegetables and eating any kind of chemicals.
Yeah. All right.
So when I compost at home with the compost worms, I do try to add some things like the corn stalks and the straw. I did start composting with newspaper in the worm bin, and then I learned what Adam's talking about with the ink being pretty detrimental to what you're creating.
The black ink or colored ink?
The colored ink, yeah.
So
The black ink is
newspaper
carbon-based. Yeah, it's usually soy-based nowadays, so it tends to be perfectly fine from heavy metals.
Do you take that in the
Yeah, a lot of
compost?
people will include bits of newspaper, sometimes crumbled up a fair amount of it, and then others will do computer paper as well. Just look to avoid glossy and the colored inks.
And with the at-home composting, to answer your question about pizza boxes, unfortunately, I would say no to that one at home as well, because the worms, if you're doing it with the red wiggler worms, they don't like citrus, onions, or grease. And meat and dairy is also something you want to stay away from just because of
With
the
the red
smell.
wiggler worm?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so grease, you definitely don't want to feed them. It actually can suffocate them because they breathe through their skin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So don't get them greasy.
Right, exactly.
And worms are also something you'd want to keep inside because the extreme temperatures of the summer heat and then the cold temperatures in the winter can either freeze them or kill them from a heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
Keep the worms inside.
Yeah,
That's
my roommates are not too happy
no,
about that one.
That sounds interesting, but what else is next? What about the wood slats, right? That you build yourself like 4x4
Yeah.
compost, and then you lift the.
So those are what we have in the Growing Places community gardens. And so those do work, and they do work well when you have people maintaining them, but you want to stick with just your garden waste. Some people add your produce in there as well, which is fine, but no meat or dairy because it is outside and you don't want to
The
attract
bears will be there.
all of that junk. Yeah. And then you also do need people to be turning that compost, so it helps to aerate it, and you want to make sure that it isn't just sitting and piling up. It'll take years to compost that way.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yes.
Lift-
Yep.
flipping it.
Pitchfork.
Yeah, if you are going to compost at home, that's definitely the type of system you want to go with. You want to create a volume that's a minimum of a cubic yard, and that'll allow for things to compost at least relatively fast as compared to a lot of like the smaller plastic bins that you can just buy off the shelf.
And at City Compost, how do you turn the compost? And do you mix everybody's compost together and just give dirt?
Yeah, so it is, everyone's material is mixed together. That's what allows for accelerated process. So everything will be tracked in at each home, say 10 pounds here, 5 pounds there. Total weight will be gathered from that, and then the finished compost material distributed accordingly. And then containers are aerated and then also mechanically turned, and then by hand as well.
Mechanically turned how?
So there's a tractor at some points that'll be used, and then digging in.
And you brought some of your compost today?
Yeah, and so...
Or would you call this compost or you call this soil?
Yeah, so I mean, to me, compost is just a type of soil that's very rich in organic matter.
Okay.
There's clay, there's silt, and there's sand, and I would say the fourth category would be compost. So this right here is a gallon of compost, and is actually about how much you would receive if you were to fill up the 5-gallon container full to the top, with food scraps. It's about a 20% return once everything breaks down. So.
And so does this get moldy if you leave it covered?
It really shouldn't. I haven't had any issues with this stuff here because everything's already really broken down to its kind of base components. And so sometimes if you have compost sit and sealed for like a long period of time, because there's a decent amount of moisture, you'll get a little bit of algae.
Okay.
But the algae wouldn't actually hurt the compost. It would still be good. And then this particular compost hasn't had that occur. So.
So with the compost, we can theoretically we can compost any food matter, probably not pizza boxes, heavy metal, but paper products. What about paper plates?
Yeah, paper plates would be fine as well. Napkins, tea bags,
Napkins,
coffee filters,
paper towels.
Yeah, paper towels are okay. Want to avoid certain chemicals. So for service, I look to avoid any materials that have been used for personal hygiene purposes. So the tissues are usually in that category of the trash.
Okay,
So,
but paper towels, napkins,
Yeah.
Paper plates.
Paper plates. There's a lot of compostable wares out there now.
Oh,
You'll
like
see them in different coffee
compostable,
shops.
forks and
Yeah,
stuff?
the forks, the knives, like the clamshell things you might have at takeout. A lot of coffee shops, you'll see the cups themselves will
They say
say
compostable?
compostable on it.
And you take
Yeah.
those at City Compost.
Yep, try to make it easy for folks so all that material can be received.
That's nice. Then I can buy reuse the the compostable forks and spoons, and I'm not throwing them in the
That
trash.
stuff is really
Yep.
hard to
Because you can't
compost at
recycle
And you
it.
can't recycle
It
it.
just goes in the landfill.
Yeah.
But if it
Yeah.
can be composted,
And it's tough too
Exactly.
because they are made of a recycled plastic and a recyclable plastic, but they're so small
Right.
that they end up just not making it through the
they just gum up the
screening.
machine and they can't read the.
And then paper cups as well. You might think that a paper cup is something that can be recycled because it's paper, but they actually have a thin film plastic lining on them, or they're waxed, and then both of those scenarios, they end up going to the trash.
Right. So if you get compostable cups, compostable throwaway items,
Yeah, you build up
Forks and
more
knives.
soil instead of contributing towards the filling
the
landfills, and then oftentimes most of the landfills in Massachusetts are full. That just happens to not be the case here in Fitchburg.
well, we have less than 7 years on our landfill. So all the more time that Fitchburg can reduce.
Yeah, it extends the life of the landfill and then prevents stuff from being trucked further and further away, or just being sent to an incinerator. And then, I mean, the big benefit that I like to highlight is the ability to grow more, at home, in container gardens, and then at community gardens as well, and supporting the local agriculture system also.
Your own natural miracle grow.
Exactly. Yeah. So at our community gardens, we don't have any kind of strict regulations on the practices that people use, because the main point of gardening and the gardens we set up is that people have access to this safe space, a green space, and somewhere to grow food, which is in turn food access. But we really do promote those sustainable practices and hope that people would use those, including composting. So it's definitely a better alternative to the Miracle Grow or to any other kind of fertilizer or input you'd be using.
Do you do composting classes at Growing Places?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
know you do a lot of classes, like how to
Exactly.
can your vegetables, how to start a garden.
Yeah, so we do composting workshops. I think we do it's one of our monthly series workshops, which just means we do one workshop a week that builds on the basic or a month that builds on the basic gardening classes that we offer. So composting is one of those. I think it's offered in the fall.
So you can go to growingplaces.org.
Yes,
Find out
growingplaces.org.
more
You can
information
learn
about that.
our composting workshop. You can learn about our other gardening programs, community gardens, the farmers market, all sorts of things.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to cut to a quick commercial, and then we'll be back to get more into the nitty gritty and the dirt of composting. Hi, Sam Squailia here with Melissa McGann from WIC Services.
That's correct. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So the WIC program is a nutrition education program for pregnant women and children under age 5. We provide healthy foods that are really specific, which I have in my bag here. And the best way to apply is just simply to call. The phone number will be up on the screen in a moment or two.
Oh, there we go.
There we are.
Yeah, so
it's
WIC
really
is
easy.
available for any mother, expecting mother, children under 5 years old.
Right.
Or 5 and under.
Correct.
Yeah.
They have to be income eligible. The income eligibility guidelines are pretty high compared to other social service programs or support programs. The income guidelines should be coming up in a moment, but it really allows a lot of working families to participate. In fact, most of our participants are of working families. So don't hesitate to call and apply just to see if you might qualify. You never know. It's a fabulous program.
Yeah, and so you get a card that you can go around and shop, and you can
Yes.
you have a little app on your phone that you can scan the items and make sure that you can get every item that you're eligible for every
Exactly.
month.
It's very easy.
Yeah. So
easy.
what do we get?
So we've got some whole grain pasta.
Is regular pasta included?
No, you
just
can,
the whole grain.
You can only get the whole grain. I know.
We got corn.
Produce, broccoli, my magic bag, yogurt, And we have Stonyfield. We have a lot of different brands of both cereals, which I don't have in here, and yogurt.
Can you get the yogurt with the candy in it?
Heck no.
That's reasonable.
And another whole grain is the is brown rice, which...
Oh, brown rice. Can you get white rice?
No, you cannot.
Brown rice. Well,
Nothing
brown
white.
rice is healthier.
No, they would.
Yeah.
But we do little taste tests at the office for folks so that they can actually try it, and you'd be amazed how many people were like, brown, and then they tried it,
like,
and they were like,
delicious.
it's not that bad, you know?
Yeah.
So I encourage anybody who thinks they may be eligible, they're not sure, they're wondering, just give us a call. That's what we're there for. And we make it really easy to apply.
The number's right on your screen here. You can call the Mockwick office in
Correct.
Fitchburg, and or anywhere in the state, they'll direct you to the right location.
Exactly. So if you're from, let's say you're from Gardner or Barry, we have offices out there. We'll connect you there. If you're from Cambridge, I'll find the number and connect you there. So it's really literally just a phone call. You don't have to do much more than that to start.
Great. All right. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
And we're back talking about composting on DFN. Adam from City Compost.
Hello again.
All right. So let's talk about the compost program at City Compost.
Yeah,
All right.
of course.
Because the thing I love about it, so I signed up 3 weeks ago. So I've been getting my compost picked up. All right?
Yeah, I
Now, do
believe-
you analyze my compost? Can you tell what I'm eating?
So not at this point. Don't really go into that much of a detail yet. But at some point, I do hope to be able to do some like photo imagery analysis to determine like each material type in order to optimize the process. Because as was discussed a little bit before, different materials will have different properties in terms of their carbon and nitrogen, or like how green they are when it comes to the material itself, and then also the moisture content will vary greatly across. Like lettuce, for example, is actually like 96% moisture. And so that type of information is great to know when balancing to try to maximize throughput and keep things as efficient as possible to get finished compost even back faster than 6 months.
I mean, if you composted for an entire city, then you would need a system like that in order to, something that takes an image and sends it down that chute, maybe.
It would definitely help.
Right?
It would definitely help with the balancing of things. I don't want to have things optimized too much in terms of machinery. Automated. I really want to be able to just like use it for informational purposes that would just be difficult to capture by just visually looking at something, and then really focus on creating more jobs in terms of the collection of the services, the managing of the compost pile, and everything like that. So,
how many people do you currently employ at City Compost?
So right now it's myself. It's a one-man show. But I am actively hiring for 2 roles. And so I'm going to be interviewing tomorrow to have somebody help me conduct the routes, provide service to about 265 customers every week right now. And then also somebody just to get out there to the farmer markets, different events, and help spread the word about composting.
Like a marketing guy.
Yes, yes.
So you currently service Gardner, Fitchburg, Leominster.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of areas that pretty much all over central Massachusetts and many parts of eastern Massachusetts as well. I do a couple of days out in Boston. I got my start when I was living out in Somerville, and since I've moved back to near my hometown of Phillipston, I live in Gardner at the moment. And then if I have somebody in a town that we don't provide service to, look to make it happen. It only takes a few people to have it ultimately make sense, and really just want to make it more available and accessible to people.
Where do you currently service? What cities and towns?
So in terms of the areas that might be being reached by the program here, Princeton, Leominster, Fitchburg, Ashburnham, Gardner, the surrounding towns. So.
And if there's enough people, if there's not enough people yet, that you put them on a list.
Yeah, if I didn't mention
once I get enough
where it is
people,
that you live, definitely still reach out. You can either visit citycompost.com or give a call as well, 978-378-3048.
And citycompost.com?
Yeah, citycompost.com.
Citycompost.com. You've got a nice website that tells you everything you need to know.
Yes, yeah, goes through all the details of service and benefits and features.
Yep. All right, so here we got pictures of home composting.
Yeah, and so these
Are these our options for how to compost?
so these are
Can
actually
we pull that up on
from-
the screen, Mike? On the big screen? There we go.
So these right here are actually it's called an earth machine.
Earth machine.
And it's a system that is often used by, sold by municipalities. And I've had several customers who've had these installed at their homes.
Oh,
And
you actually have to install it in the ground?
So they're pieced together. And then they've had me, we'll do kind of a one-time batch load of the material that's been in their earth machine just because they've been dissatisfied with the results. And so the one here on the left with the 4 pictures, you'll see here it was kind of sunk into the ground a bit.
Yeah.
Usually it's, if we could go back.
Can we go
I'm
back?
not sure if it's
That
automated.
slide? Mike? There we go.
Yeah, and so if it's, see how it's kind of sunk in a bit? And so it would still, it's kind of, probably a few inches right here, and then back to like 6 or so inches in the back. And then when that was kind of taken apart, you can see this is kind of
It didn't
the
compost
mess,
great.
if you will, that they were dealing with in their yard. So, we ended up scooping all that out and getting that
Fill in the
into
buckets.
into the compost process that with City Compost.
And
so
what are
that way
these
they can
things?
still hang
Are
on
these
to
the
the
same
material.
are these other earth machines?
So that's in the same scenario on the right, just a few more photos. They ended up having a lot more material in their system. You can see on the top there, it was about a little bit over half full, the top being leaves that were just kind of fresh from last fall.
See,
And
this
then,
is what it looks like
the
over on my
buckets that were
stone
being
wall.
filled up.
It looks like this.
Yeah,
It
it
looks
can
like
get
that.
it can
There's
get a little
bunch of-
mucky.
And there's a bunch
a bit
of
more
coffee
mud.
filters that haven't degraded.
Yeah.
So I can take all that and I can fill my bucket.
Yeah, you could definitely add it to your bucket over the weeks. I would recommend it. It's gonna turn into soil instead of just kind of sitting there.
And just sit
So,
there.
Yeah.
I've had my dogs. Every time I dump the compost bin, my dogs go over there and like, hey!
Yeah.
But they're good.
Yeah.
They're sneaky.
That'll happen. I was Mass Fish and Game, talks about raccoons and skunks being attracted to compost piles.
Yep.
I met a woman in Princeton at a farmer market who was telling me about and people don't believe me when I tell them this, that a bear continues to take her system that she has built and kind of drag it over to the wall.
Aha!
So, I mean, it does attract the wild animals. So,
Yeah, I know it attracts my dog, so it definitely attracts the
Yeah, and with
the
this,
wild
it just
animals.
goes in the bucket, it's picked up. No worries about the pests and the odors.
Yeah,
and
no,
then you get
I
a clean
I
bucket
really
every
like
week as well.
I really like this concept. And so this is a carbon filter, like a countertop.
Countertop, correct.
I put mine under my sink, but the carbon filter keeps the smell right out.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it
that'll
never
pull
smells.
in any stray odor if you have like a heavily scented meal, fish, or anything like that.
And you can just take this out and wash it in the sink.
Actually, you wouldn't want to get that wet.
Really? Well, because mine gets wet.
So from my understanding, when it gets wet, it deteriorates the length that the product will last. So the filters themselves will last about 6 months.
Oh, really? That's
And then, but they're like,
filter.
I think a couple bucks to replace.
Do you
then,
sell do you sell these or provide these?
So folks will get set up with either the stainless steel option here or the plastic option here as a part of getting started with service.
Yep.
so-
And I know that these are available at the Fitchburg Board of Health.
Are they?
They have
Okay.
these. I think they're
Great.
$5 or
Oh,
$7.
awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't been
Does
over
this
that
have
way,
a carbon filter? No.
No, so the plastic pails do not. And then they each do have holes on the top, though. The one in that container they're a lot smaller than here because it has the carbon filter.
Yep.
And so these holes allow for airflow so that condensation and moisture doesn't build up in the container. So it doesn't kind of go anaerobic like we talked about before, which is the no air and the methane.
Yep.
And that'll
And
prevent
stinks.
that. And then the carbon filter with the stainless steel does the additional odor control.
Yep. Yeah. No. This is sharp looking. Do you have any other options?
And so I've come across I have a ceramic option and then a bamboo fiber kind of option as well
Ooh,
that I've just
bamboo.
kind of come across, and I'm gonna look to get added into the mix of things. So
Yeah, mine is ceramic, but smashed it down once and I broke the side.
Oh, the lid itself, or the?
The lid, yeah.
Oh, I could probably help get just a lid for you.
Yep, so I like the stainless steel one. It's sharp. Yes, so okay, I fill this thing, and then I can fill this bucket, and you come pick up this bucket every week.
Yeah, so every week this bucket will be picked up, and it will also be replaced as well with an empty one.
A nice clean one.
Yeah, so that way you don't have to worry about dealing with the bucket side of things. And then in terms of the finished compost, this right here, I know we mentioned it before, is a gallon of compost, and it's 20% of the 5-gallon bucket, which will be how much compost ends up going back to customers with how much is made. And a gallon of compost, you can add an inch to a few square feet of your garden, and then that's oftentimes 1 week I'll have a full 5-gallon bucket from some customers. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. Other times it's a gallon or 2 gallons at an individual customer. But really over the period of months and years, you can turn soil that might just be clay, or it might just be kind of a topsoil with not a lot of nutrients in it from when you moved into your place or just haven't been gardening
really
much,
rich,
to very, very rich
nutrient-rich soil.
Grow a ton of fresh, organic food, either at home. If you don't have space, there's always container gardens as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be something fancy. It just needs to be something that will hold on to the soil, and then you can add a little bit of water to.
So maybe I can actually grow more than 1 tomato from a plant?
Yeah. I've, some tomato plants on average will yield like 8 to 10 pounds of tomato. And you get like the real heirloom varieties too growing, stuff that you really won't find in grocery stores just because they're difficult to transport and are hard to be supplied to the larger box stores.
There's nothing like a good
in the
homegrown tomato.
Oh, they're the freshest too.
And you get the tomato sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So down to the specifics of composting, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you know what to mix with everything?
Yeah, and so as we talked about a little bit before, everything that comes from the kitchen is very green, and it's also very wet or high in moisture.
Even meat.
So even meat, eggs, very, very much so.
Cheese.
Yeah, that as well. And so it might not necessarily seem like it. I believe meat, like a red meat, will be around like a 65% moisture content, and the fruits and veggies a whole lot more, like up in your 90s, 85. Some of the drier fruit, and to 95. And so if that material is not balanced properly with a drier material and with a brown material, which has the more carbon than, as we kind of talked about a bit.
So like leaves and newspaper.
Leaves, newspaper, cardboard.
Grass trimmings?
The stick parts of shrubs. So like leaves themselves.
Grass trimmings would be the vegetable part.
Grass clippings would actually be a green as well. So if you're just like mixing in fruits and veggies with grass clippings, you still wouldn't be balancing things off.
Right.
And so if it's all green, you tend to have, you're going to get ammonia as a runoff. And so then that'll be one of the potential odors, and then kind of it will leach into the ground.
So that's what I've been doing wrong at home, is not mixing.
That could be a big part
balance.
of it. And then there's the pile size as well is important. The particle size also.
Particle size?
Yeah. So if you have a bunch of grass, because the size of each piece of grass is very small,
they're covering it up.
It'll compact.
It's getting anaerobic.
Yeah, it'll get anaerobic because the air can't get in. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then so the balancing on the other side, the leaves tend to be much drier. The wood chips tend to be much drier. And so instead of having to figure all that out, City Compost will kind of just handle that for folks. And then a lot of times access to the browns is very seasonal anyway. Leaves being kind of in the fall, people don't want to just stockpile a bunch of leaves to balance out their
Is that how you do it? Do you stockpile leaves?
So leaves will be built up, the wood chips will be hung on to. Always want to make sure we have plenty of browns to be able to
when you mix wood chips in with the greens.
Yeah. So it all gets balanced. People don't have to keep leaves from the fall for the summertime. So that's a big plus too. And then some people don't have, they're in apartments, they're only generating the green material.
Yep. They don't read the newspaper.
Yeah, and then the newspaper, only so much of it balances too.
Oh,
so
yeah.
because of the paper tends to be Sometimes it's not a lot, and a lot of pages of color as well.
Paper towels. Does that
Yeah.
balance?
Yeah, paper towels would add some carbon to it, depending on the amount of moisture. It can only pull in so much, so that's the other side of things. So there's your green to brown, and then your moisture balancing. So moisture balancing is, a lot of compost articles will emphasize greens to browns, but I would say moisture balancing is more of an importance in order of preventing odor.
Moisture balancing.
Yeah, because if it's very, very wet, then it's gonna go anaerobic as well.
So if your compost is very, very wet, add some newspaper, add some paper towels, add some paper, add some wood, sticks.
If it's dried out, for the wood stuff and the leaf stuff can help dry things out, or use service. I mean, I put this together to really try to make it simple and easy for folks.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
And then
I'm enjoying
don't have
it.
to worry about the space too that it takes up or attracting the animals. So you emphasize using that space to garden instead.
Pumpkins,
to grow
rotten
more fresh
pumpkins.
stuff. Yeah,
Can I take my rotten jack-o'-lanterns
Exactly.
and throw it in the compost
the
thing?
seasonal items.
That'll be
The
nice.
corn stalks come the fall. If people are using decorative material like
My
that.
mums that have
Pumpkins
died.
also.
What
Yeah,
about all my
pumpkins.
all my marigolds when they die?
Yeah,
Throw
yeah.
them in the compost
Yeah,
bin?
different flower
Or
trimmings.
the bucket?
Yeah.
What about weeds?
So weeds can be accepted. A lot of articles will also say don't compost weeds, but
I
high
never threw
temperatures-
my weeds in there because I don't want them growing.
Yeah, and so high temperatures will be reached. So weed seeds will be destroyed once temperatures are above 130 degrees or so.
So you take
And
weeds.
so so people will put in a little bit of that also.
I really have to start maximizing my bucket. I've just been putting my coffee grounds.
Yeah. So I've some one customer today. I dropped off a fourth bucket for her.
Oh,
And so,
yeah?
Yeah. So maybe she might be doing something with the neighborhood, which is great.
Yeah.
She's working with her neighbors to kind of have them contributing to her buckets. It works fine for me. So
Sure.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. It's gonna be. She'll be probably getting the most compost out of anyone so far.
So now is that how you kind of, do you like weigh the bucket from the customers and
Exactly.
just mark it down?
Yeah, so every-
and then you just deliver 20% of that in weight of compost.
Not in weight of, but in volume of.
In
And
volume
so
of.
a gallon of compostable food scraps ends up weighing about 5 pounds. And so that's extrapolated to the finished compost.
It's by
in terms of
volume, not
percentage,
weight, like
and
cereal.
then back to
Or no,
the
that's
compost, which compost will weigh, compost will weigh about 40 pounds a cubic foot.
Heavier than regular soil.
It is a denser, well,
Or
no, it's like lighter than like if you had like a sand or like a loam. It's actually a little bit lighter because it tends to be fluffier.
good to know.
Yeah, but like a 5-gallon bucket is about 2/3 of a cubic foot, and that'll weigh 25, 30 pounds, and so 7.5 gallons, more like just about, is a cubic foot of soil, and at 40 pounds. So it'd be a little bit lighter than just the food scraps themselves because of the moisture. Compost is around
less
50%.
moisture than in your standard compost, unless you're mixing.
Than the food material.
Yeah.
So compost has about 50% moisture, where the food scraps end up being around the 80 to 90% water.
So you don't call it. So yeah, you don't call the stuff in the bucket compost, even
No,
though I'm saying
yeah,
I'm composting. It's not compost. It's food material.
It's the ingredients for the compost. So there's your.
Does it have a name? Pre-compost?
Your compostables.
Compostables.
Your ingredients. Yeah. And then there's the composting, which is like the the active process of the material changing from an ingredient, a food scrap, a leaf, to the finished compost, which can be used as your gardening soil.
Great. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and cut to another little PSA, and then we'll be back talking more about composting. Hi, Sam Squailia here with Erica Woods.
Hello. Yes.
Growing Places.
Exactly. Yeah. So for all of you who might not know about Growing Places, we are a local nonprofit. We work in Leominster, Fitchburg, and Clinton, and we are a gardening group. So we teach folks how to garden. We manage community gardens in Fitchburg. We run garden and cooking educational programs and do all sorts of things, food and local urban ag.
Yeah, and so you have a fast-track adult learning program going on right now, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we started with our Teaching Garden program a few years ago, which is basically a season-long adult education garden program, and it's awesome. It's intensive, hands-on at our community gardens, but we realized a lot of folks can't commit to garden from April to September every week with us. So now we're starting this fast track where people can sign up with us for a condensed garden experience. It's more of a classroom setting rather than being out in the garden, but you still get to learn all of the basics of how to grow your own food, and you can do that in just a few weeks.
Is that like a 6-week program? Or?
So I believe it's 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
We try to fit in, I think it's 5 classes in 3 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we're running one of the fast track sessions right now. It started on Monday. If you're interested, I think we can still fit people in. But if you happen to catch this later on and don't get signed up for this fast track, we will be offering that again later in the season.
So another fast track adult learning garden experience will be starting in September?
Yep.
Another 3-week session.
Yeah.
So you can go to growingplaces.org to see more information and to sign up?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
And we're back talking about composting on DFN with Adam from City Compost. All right, so the environmental benefits of composting, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about the environmental benefits. We're saving landfill space. Let's talk about all of that.
Yeah, so if food scraps or other organic material go into a landfill, then oftentimes that material is starved of oxygen and goes anaerobic, which is going to emit your methane gas. And so methane gas, from a greenhouse gas perspective, there's 2 climate models. One of them has methane gas as 18 times more potent than CO2, and then the other model has it as 30 times more potent than CO2.
Either way,
So
it's way.
either way you look at it,
it's bad.
it's a lot more greenhouse gas that's getting sent up into the atmosphere.
And from just a municipal perspective, it's a lot of solid waste that could be diverted.
Exactly. Yeah. It does save the city a good amount of money as well in terms of taxpayer dollars, because any city program is paying per weight for that material to be managed, in addition to the collection frequency.
Right. And I mean, I've heard of a lot of municipalities that actually have a municipal compost pickup. So you have your recycling, you have your trash, and then you have your compost.
Yes.
Like the piggeries used to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of those cities have actually been able to change their frequency of trash collection to every other week, and then have compost every week, because the material that has a potential to go sour is removed.
Yep.
And then just folks in general will be generating so much less trash because of that. That stuff can be picked up every week for the compost.
If you took all the things that are food that you throw away in the trash and put it into a compost bin, I could save a lot of trash bags.
Yeah, you save a lot of trash bags too. You don't need to use any bags with this approach.
Yeah.
So, save a little bit there as well. And plus there's less plastic that's being used.
Yeah,
So-
and in my own yard, there, all the stuff, all the plant material, like my marigolds and my mums and the weeds, those are all things that I can put into the bin,
Exactly.
into the bucket,
Exactly.
or the bin, however you compost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but talking about the City Compost Service, which I'm loving the concept of, and I'm loving doing it right now. So let's talk about cost.
Yeah, and so we'll get folks set up, with 1 or 2 of these. Typically I'll go with 2, just because now and again you're going to have overflow, and it's great to have that container available, even if it's not being used. But from a service perspective, it's just $5 a week, and then for the first full 5-gallon bucket. And then if a second bucket is used, just 50 cents a gallon of material itself. And so
So
even
your
if it's
second
just a
bucket-
gallon or so in the bottom of the bucket, it's just an extra 50 cents. and then that covers all the processing that's involved, and then being able to get the compost back too.
So that's inexpensive for a second bucket, because you only pay if you need it.
You only pay
and
if you
even
use
then,
it.
the maximum cost is $250.
Exactly, exactly. And you
That's a bargain.
get all the compost back, and can use that to grow more.
Now, when we get the compost back,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you have your service for 6 months, which is $5 a week
Mm-hmm.
for 6 months, then you can start getting your compost back. Now, is that
Yes.
a weekly soil delivery, or is it one at a time, or how do you do it?
So compost will be distributed monthly after the 6 months, and based upon exactly what you put in.
So do you put it in a black bucket?
Yeah, so it would be dropped off in your container that's replaced for service.
So once a month, we get the bucket, and it's heavy, and you're like, aha, I got my soil.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the soil that we get back, is it safe? Is it tested? Do
Yeah,
we get
so that's
we
one
get
of-
like a little piece of paper that says the pH of the soil, or how does it work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different properties of soil that are important to know for growers. You know, one of them being the pH, which is your soil acidity. You know, different plants like different soil conditions.
Like blueberries, like real acidic
Yeah,
soil.
they like the very acidic soil, and then you know some other vegetables like still slightly acidic, but not as much as the blueberries.
Vegetables.
Yeah, and then different ones will like different pHs. And so with service included in, you know, is all that information in terms of the nutrients of the soil, in terms of its nitrogen, its phosphorus, and its potassium. Those are kind of the big three, if you will, from a fertilizer perspective that oftentimes, like you mentioned, the Miracle Grow.
Yeah.
We'll list as the number dash number dash number.
Oh yeah.
And so compost has those as well, and then also has the slow release property because a lot of that's bound up in that organic matter, so it will
Slowly breaking
continually
down
feed your
still.
plants over the season. And it's really only something you need to add to your soil once, you know, maybe twice a year.
Now, can we
instead of every
request
month
a
or so.
certain nitrogen, phosphorus
You know,
combination?
I definitely want to get to that point where folks can look for a soil that has a higher pH or a lower pH. But at this time, it would just be kind of, you know,
You get what you get.
What's there, yeah.
And do we get like a report card of what the compost we get?
It's
Or
not,
is it all
not
basically
built
the
in
same?
at this point? But all that information would be readily available, definitely.
If we
The
request
pH
what's
as
the
well.
what's the pH of the soil that I got? Or do we have to
and
call?
then, it'll be batch tested, so it'll be much higher frequency than a lot of compost that you might have just in the market in general. So if you have like numbers on a bagged compost, the typical testing procedure is going to be, once, maybe twice a year, depending on the, thousands and thousands of cubic yards of material that they're generating.
So the numbers on the bag aren't necessarily accurate.
Not always tied to the specific batch that you have in your hand. It's going to be from a sample from months before and everything. So you're going to look to do high frequency testing on a smaller batch basis. My thinking, I'll be able to do like every 1,000 cubic feet, which would be like an incredibly high frequency. So, and then all your trace minerals as well. So calcium, magnesium are another two that are very important. And so I've come across a lot of soils with different testing that I've done with folks, so they want to know what's in their garden now and what they're working with currently. And I see a lot of soil that tends to be lower in calcium. And then the big one is lead. And so we'll check, soils are typically accepted that they have, a little bit of lead in them just across, from a residual perspective of between 7 and 20 parts per million. And, of course, the lower the lead, the better. The EPA recommends below 300 is deemed safe for growing. Below 200 is kind of what's recommended. And then, the lower it is, the better it is. And so...
No lead is better.
No lead is better, yeah. So we'll check to make sure that the lead's really low, and it should never be an issue because we're not taking in street sweepings and other industrial wastes. So street sweepings can have a lot of lead in them just from the roadways, old, back when gas was leaded. A lot of that's still present in the road systems. And then urban soils with paint on people's houses, right around the perimeter of the building.
So don't put paint chips in the
no paint
compost.
chips.
Don't put street sweepings.
If people want to do like their yard material across the board, we'll look to do a quick soil sample just to make sure that their soil isn't really high in lead. Most of the soils I've tested have been, well within the 7 to 20 parts per million range, which is, magnitude of 10 lower than what's deemed safe, which is totally fine.
It's a normal occurring element.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the lead's important. Also, we'll test for lead. We'll do the pH, do a full nutrient profile, and also we'll look to do bioassays. A bioassay. So it's a way to test for certain herbicides that are in the soil in order to make sure that when you put it into your garden, it's actually going to help the plants and not hurt them. So just small drops of certain herbicides can wreak havoc on a compost and on a garden. And so if you
don't put herbicide in your garden.
Yes, do not put herbicides in your garden.
How else can it get in there? From the Scott stuff that you might put on the lawn that kills the weeds, and then you dump the grass in the compost bin?
Yeah, certain things like that. There's certain classes of herbicides that are known not to break down called persistent herbicides. And so, there was one case in the world of composting where a certain herbicide was sprayed on a hay field. The hay was fed to horses. The horse manure was then composted, and then that was still present. And so if they just didn't know what was going on, they sent it to Dow and then Monsanto. They were kind of saying, it's them or it's them. They didn't really know, and ultimately they figured out what the chemical was and were able to identify the source. And so there's tests that can be conducted to take that into account and make sure that nothing's going to be an issue.
So that's a separate service that you offer at City Compost, is soil testing?
So we'll do quick soil tests for folks, or we'll help them get the information they need to get started, if they want to include that yard material kind of across the board. And then we'll test all the compost standard just to make sure that we're producing a top quality soil.
So the compost that you get back after 6 months, once a month delivered, you can trust has been tested. At least once every 1,000 cubic yards?
Feet is the
Feet?
plan, so we've got to kind of see how it'll work out. But definitely making sure that it'll be.
And each bucket's about 3 cubic feet?
So a bucket is about 2/3 of a cubic foot.
2/3 of a cubic foot,
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot of compost material.
It is. I mean, even the 1 gallon here, a cubic foot, you can cover, 12 square feet of garden space.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. Let's see. What else? How about how well my garden can grow with the composted material that I get back?
So compost will, I did a little test where I had 2 heads of romaine lettuce, and one I planted just kind of into the soil that we had in the garden, and then another I planted with just a handful of compost, kind of worked into the roots as I planted it. And I believe there may be some photos of that, if that's possible to show at the end, the last slide there.
Hey, Mike, can you see the pictures with the lettuce
the picture with the
at
lettuce.
the end of the slideshow? Let's see if we can pull that up. Ooh, here's the bioassay.
Yeah, that's the bioassay there.
Grow food and save your money.
Yeah.
This just fits right into growing places. Bioassay.
Yeah,
so what is this?
So the bioassay is the thing I mentioned for testing for herbicides. And so you can't quite make it out, but on the top right plant there, it says 0 parts per billion.
And it's clearly
and
the better.
You see a very vibrant,
plant.
Healthy, growing plant.
And this plant has a lot of
and then it's 250.
herbicide?
And so you can see kind of the plant slowly becoming less and less able to grow.
Don't grow well with herbicide.
They do not. And then here we have some lettuce.
So which one was the one that you mixed?
So the lettuce on the right there's 2 heads of romaine there. And you can see. So
this one has the compost?
Yep, and so I put just a handful of compost when I planted that this year. And you can just see how much more it really took off compared to the one on the left. And then I'm putting together some stuff now with some seedlings and doing just 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches of compost worked in, because to really try to maximize the amount that can be grown, and not really, because sometimes you don't really need to overdo it, and you can grow a whole lot more with more space instead of just having less space with more compost.
Yeah.
And then on the left, red leaf lettuce.
Right in concrete blocks, huh?
Yeah, right in the blocks. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. You can definitely go fancier if you want.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, it's really just a matter of having more fresh food be able to grow. The red leaf lettuce, typically goes for about $2 each at the grocery store. You can grow 4 of those, and the yield time is 45 days.
14, 16, 18, 20. You got a bunch of money worth of lettuce there.
Yeah, you can really save a lot on
And
your
it's great
salad
because you can just
and
go
other
cut
stuff
it
too.
and it'll keep growing.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, you can plant it again too, and it definitely a few seasons there, and during the summer, and then even throughout the winter time, there's certain stuff that you can grow year round in like windows, like a window covered system, to like have it plastic covered called a cold frame.
Cold frame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the great thing, like right now, is if we start signing up for the compost, in 6 months, it'll be ready to start our veggie seedlings inside
the fresh going.
in the southern window.
Yeah, definitely. And now's the perfect time to start with service because all the compost will be ready for you in the spring.
Yeah. So we want to sign up for City Compost. We're like, okay, I don't want to have to pitchfork this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Where do we go? How do we sign up?
Yeah, you can do it right online at citycompost.com.
Citycompost.com.
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Here's the information. So you can email Adam, right, at adamj@citycompost.com. You can call, or you can go to citycompost.com and peruse the website. And you actually have the forms there that we can fill out.
Yeah, you can sign up online. Simple in terms of contact information, address, and billing. Or you can direct.
Just give your credit card information.
Yeah, it's all processed through PayPal and everything too. So,
PayPal.
Yeah.
Yep. You can sign right up and you start. You'll deliver a bucket first, right?
Yeah, I still follow up on the phone, make sure people, if they have any questions on how to get started, and everyone always asks me, "Are you sure you can put in meat?" And I always have to tell them, "Yes, I'm sure. Meat's okay."
Yeah.
As is like dairy and yogurt and stuff like that.
And is it extra? How much do the containers cost?
And so we'll set people up with the 2 5-gallon and then the green container for 20, and then the additional stainless steel for 20 more if they want to upgrade to that. Now that I'm aware of the option of this through the Board of Health that you mentioned earlier, I might have to see what options might be there to reduce the cost of this.
Yeah, the board. I know the Fitchburg Board of Health has this available. I think it's $5. It might be $7.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
because they're trying to promote composting as well.
Yeah.
So this is definitely something the city of Fitchburg is interested in. City of Leominster, every city. And the Leominster Board of Health also has these. The same green bin. The Leominster Board of Health also does. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely just get more back into the soil and more fresh food as was up before.
So all you need to get started is you need a compost pail. Or you can get one from you. If you have one already, great.
Yeah.
You can, and otherwise you'll deliver one of these, or maybe another one in the future. And then you'll deliver two buckets. One is a backup.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
One that you can normally use. And every week you just put it out at your curbside. What day is it? What day is pickup?
Typically, in Fitchburg, Leominster, service is on Monday. So the container would be set out on Sunday evening because sometimes service happens like first thing in the morning. I always want to prioritize making sure service gets conducted before other things.
So Fitchburg, Leominster is Monday, so put it out Sunday night.
Exactly.
At the curb.
Yeah, then it'll get picked up. You'll get a fresh one. Everything's weighed in. If you ever want to know like how much weight you're at, you can definitely pull that information up and let you know, and then kind of take it from there. You don't even have to worry about you get composted ultimately a year faster, if not more, than you would if you were to try to start composting at home now. And then these systems here are all photos of piles I've come across.
Because you always start things with the best intention.
And then
6 months go by and you forget to turn the thing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, it's already, it's too far gone.
And so if somebody does have a system like this at their home, oftentimes, like what these photos are from, are doing one-time loads.
Right.
And so they still want to hang on to that material. So we'll grab that up, we'll track all that in as well. And we'll do kind of a batch load, because oftentimes it's more than just 1 5-gallon would be. And so we'll clean everything up, rake it out nice and even, and then...
All right, so Adam from City Compost, thank you so much for coming on,
Yeah.
telling us all about composting.
Thank you for having me, Sam. It's been a great time.
Yeah, so citycompost.com. You can find out more information. You can sign up to have your compost picked up every week. It's the easiest service for compost. Way easier than the pitchfork or the spin.
Much.
Yeah, or anything like that. And you can call. We had the number on the screen before. And this has been great. Composting is definitely something that we're all trying to do here in the city. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again.